What's going on, beautiful people of YouTube? How you guys doing today? Today's live stream is gonna be the best. I say it all the time. Best stream ever, of course. That's how we do it here, right? Um, I don't know if it's gonna be good. No, I think it's gonna be good. Today we're gonna talk about the steps I took to get hired as a web developer. Switching careers late in my life. So I got my official real job, not an internship, an actual job when I was 39 years old. I'm about to turn 42, just to put things in perspective. It was a long journey for me. And 1 second here. I have some audio playing in the background, which we don't need. We don't need no audio. My voice should be enough. But what I'm going to say to you guys is that it was a long journey for me, and I just want to talk about the steps that I took. Not saying that these are the exact same steps you guys have to take, but let me tell you, I made a lot of mistakes. So if I could give you some tips that prevent you from making mistakes and making a career switch a reality, or helping you get your job, regardless if you're young, like middle-aged or older, doesn't matter. The point is that hopefully you will learn from my suffering and most importantly get some value out of the stream. So we're going to talk about the steps that I took, the things that I think you should have to increase your chances, and then I'll give you the reasons why I did all that stuff. And like, maybe if I put glasses on, you guys will take me with more authority. No, that looks dumb as hell. I'm not whatever that guy who wears glasses on YouTube. Really good. I don't know. Anyway, that's what we're going to talk about. But before we continue, let me know. Alex, shh. Don't say nothing, Alex. It's a secret. Don't say it, Alex. Don't say congratulations. Sorry, Alex. I forgot to tell you, Alex. Certain things, the stuff that happens in the Coding After 30 chat stays in Coding After 30. If you guys have no idea what I'm talking about, I am having a community that I'm building. It's in pre-alpha right now, so I am not getting new people into it yet. I will soon. But yes, we do have a community that I guess it would involve me to interact with it more. I've been so busy, so it's been really difficult. But hey, welcome. We got Horace jumping in. We got Alex here. Alex, by the way, is going to come on the live stream at some point. It's going to be fun. He actually also changed careers into web development. So I love talking to people that actually made the change, and actually did the thing that they set out to do, which is switching careers late in their life or early in their life, or whatever it is. Because the truth is, there's so much hype online that it's very easy to get lost in like, what it is do you really need to do? Had to just adjust my hat. What you really need to do to get hired. And there's no one size fits all, but there is some commonalities that you guys could approach this with to help you to increase your chances. Now, listen, I'm going to tell you this. Getting your first job is very difficult. Let me finish saying hello. Northern Chimp, what's up? Brian, what's up? Brian and I, we had coffee today. It was phenomenal. Brian's an amazing dude. We actually went to community college together so long ago. But congratulations for restarting the live stream. That's right. Yeah. Brian and I went to MCC together. It was a great time as always. It was like so long ago. Like that was what, 20 years ago? I don't even remember. That must have been like so long ago. So Brian, oddly enough, found me through YouTube. And the reason why I wanted to say that he found me through YouTube, he's like, hey, I think I know that guy. It sounds familiar, because I want to tell you like the power of kind of self-promoting yourself and why it should be part of your strategy if you're looking to get a job as a developer, because having a skill and being able to demonstrate that skill is super important. But what's more important is being able to promote yourself in a sea of bajillion people. Like, you got to understand that, oddly enough, spreading rumors skew. Paulie, one of the few best coders out here. I don't know if I'm the best coder, but I'm definitely one of the most well-spoken coders. No, I don't even think I'm the most well-spoken. Like, cause half the time I'm saying stuff I don't even know what I'm saying here. But what I'm saying is, like, I'm probably the most energetic YouTuber in the coding space. Outside that guy, Coding Train. If you guys haven't seen Coding Train, man, that guy's off the hook. Like, literally taking, like, I think he's just a happy dude. But every time I watch his show, I'm like, man, magic mushrooms? Like, I don't know. Like, his show is so entertaining, the best. Yes, lol. Maybe after 30, we could learn from our elders' suffering. Yeah, that's right. I am an elder. I don't act like one, but yeah, no. The point is, it's like, look, there's yeah, and let's hope so. Yeah, I know. I hope so. I hope you guys are learning something. So there's one guy that I follow. He's in like other niche, like sell courses online, whatever. But like, I don't follow him because like that I want to do the thing he does. I follow him because sometimes he says like interesting things in terms of like how you should conduct yourself and have a business, and being part of a community, and where you're able to talk to people who are in the same kind of circumstance, or either they're looking to get their first job or they just got their job. That means they're not that far removed from you guys. They're the best people to ask what's working for you, what's not working for you, because why make that mistake yourself? And I was talking to Brian today over coffee, and I said to him, I'm like, look, like we have this girl Katya who I mean, she's still part of the community. She's just been busy working as a developer for past 7 months, so she hasn't had time to come on and chat with us, which is fine because I get it, she's working. But here's the thing, she started in our community way back when I still did stuff on Discord and had a Slack channel, which I don't have time for that, guys, but I'm working on something. Like, whatever, no excuses. But like, she started learning to code, and I watched her journey. So she asked me for some advice, and I kind of gave her some of the mistakes I made, some of the things that I think worked for me. And I didn't tell her do these things like in these set steps. She just listened to the things that I said, took some of the things that she thought were important, and she just did the work. I mean, she, like, don't get me wrong, she put massive effort. But after a year and a half, and some people are going to argue, a year and a half, it's so long, she was able to get a job as a React developer, and now she's working for past 7 months, which is amazing. So she actually, this is the point I was saying. I was talking to Brian. I said it took me 4 years to figure things out. Like, maybe I'm a slow learner, possibly. But, watching Katya, she did it in a year and a half. And I know some people could do it in a year. Realistically, to me, to say, like, if someone says like 3 months, I would be suspect. I mean, 6 months if you study full time and possibly break into field, like maybe with some massive effort of reaching out to people. But usually a year and a half is a really realistic timeline to break into like entry level role, by the way, because let me tell you, I've been working going on almost 4 years, and I still, like, basically what I learned is that there's a lot of stuff that I don't know. So for me, like, I always am surprised when someone says 6 months I became this high paying developer. It's just not the case. So here's the real expectations I'm going to tell you guys. And so your first job, you might not be making the $100,000 that you were wishing you were making, especially if this is a career switch and you're starting something new as a beginner, right? A junior level developer. Like, my first job was $13.75 an hour, right? But the experience is definitely worth it, because my second job right after that was $40 an hour, and then it just keeps going up. So within 2-3 years, it's not uncalled for, like, it's not unrealistic to get to a point where you're making either close to 100K or more than 100K. But again, you got to do the work, you got to go through it. But the point that I'm saying is that everybody's journey is different. So in today's live stream, I want to talk about the steps that I took. Definitely answer any of your questions, so don't be shy. So the first thing I want to talk about is like if you're going to cover a lot of stuff, right? And I want you guys, if you think you want to dive deeper into any one of the topics, like, just ask me questions in the chat. But the first thing I'm going to say is that you have to define the scope of what you have to learn. And basically, don't try to learn everything. And if I had to recommend the path to you guys, I would say just learn React and look to get hired as a front-end developer, because to me, that's still, to this day, is the easiest way to break the field. But I'm not saying you have to. I know a lot of people are doing ASP.NET and C#. Works. This girl Anna, who stops by in the chat once in a while, she did it with Python. But what I'm saying is, like, pick one direction. Okay, I'm just going to do Python. Great. Do Python. Or I'm going to do ASP.NET. Great. Just stick with ASP.NET. Or I'm going to do, like in my case, React and JavaScript. Just stick to that. Or I'm going to do PHP and WordPress, whatever it is. But you have to have one path, one track, so it's narrow road that leads you to where you have to go. And if you're not making that decision early in your life to decide this is what I'm going to do, it's going to be very hard for you guys to stay on track because, as you guys know, you watch YouTube, there's so many different directions that you could be pulled away, and it's so easy to lose focus. So the first thing you want to do is pick a path. Okay, we decided we're going to pick web development, and please bear with me because I'm going to talk about the obvious, but then I'm going to talk about like not the obvious stuff, kind of like the selling and promoting yourself, why it's important to build networks, why it's important to get yourself out there, why it's important. And is that how you started, Polly? Yeah, that's how I started, by making mistakes and failing in life. By the way, one thing I'm really good at is failing in life and making a lot of mistakes. Ask anybody in my family that knows me, they'll be like, oh my God, it's amazing that this guy's still here. But the point is, it's at some point I had to make a decision, be like, look, the reason why these bad things were happening to you because you weren't doing the things that you had to do. And that's just the base. Like, obviously there's bad luck, right? You get struck by lightning, something terrible happens in your country, whatever happens, you can't control over that. But there are certain things in your life that you can't control. So in majority of situations, you know, all things willing, a lot of the things when we don't succeed, there's a point of responsibility that we have to take for our actions. But I'm not going to talk about that. I know you guys like here because you want to take the actions. You know what you have to do. So I'm here about telling you like what steps I took. And we talk about learning the tech stack, because believe it or not, a lot of people make it like the pedestal, learn the skill. And yes, you should learn the skill. We're going to talk about what you should know in the most basic sense to get hired. And I'm also going to show you some projects out of my portfolio. And I'm also going to talk about the most important thing, which is about growing your network, building connections, and building your authority where nobody else is kind of willing to advocate for you. Now, like simply like why you guys are here, why you guys watching my YouTube channel? Because like I'm here on YouTube. Why am I on YouTube? Because I'm trying to like promote myself and get my message across. I'm not saying you have to do a YouTube channel, but I just want you to kind of show by example that getting out there and putting that effort, like if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to see it or feel it or hear it, does the tree really fall? I have no idea. Like, I don't know. I'm not even in the forest. You know what I'm saying? So you got to get out there. You got to get involved. And you got to kind of talk about self-promotion. I'm going to talk about that as well today. But I want to talk about the most basics, like the tech stack. So we know we found the direction. You pick one path, right? Don't multiple paths. It's too ridiculous. Either pick JavaScript and React. Either pick, you know, HTML, not like HTML, you need to know regardless which tech stack you pick. Pick, you know, Python and Django, whatever. Just stick to that. ASP.NET, C#, just that. Have a path and make sure you stay in that lane until you get hired. And let me, before I get too far ahead, let me take a look here. Funny, I was thinking about going to sleep. Man, you should go to sleep, but Paul's enthusiasm is making me go, dude, you wake up at like 3 a.m. in the morning. It's ridiculous. And what's up? Just discovered you and John recently, and I'm so stoked. Man, I'm so stoked to have you on this live stream. It's amazing. I love chatting with you guys. I wish, like, we got to figure out how, like, you guys could listen. When I do these live streams, I want people to comment so I could chat with you guys. That's the most important part. That's why I do them. You know, I do have some stuff planned, but if anybody knows me, I'd like to chat with you guys about questions. Yeah, but very happy to have you. And Seven Lion says, how important is it to be able to sit and code off the top of your head? I've done many React projects as part of the course, but I sit myself with no reference material. My mind's blank. And 100% 7 lines. That is the biggest thing. Why I always say you have to build projects from scratch. And I will talk a little bit about it. And actually, I'll talk about it now in terms of the strategy, in terms of learning. And it's very common. And this is why people get stuck in tutorial hell, because they think they need to do more tutorials to make the stuff stick in their head, right? But that's not how you get better at coding things on your own. Tutorials, they teach you the basics of programming so you could learn how to learn on your own, but they don't teach you how to create stuff from scratch. It's just God's honest truth on both my cat's lives and my dog. If you just do tutorials and you never break away and force yourself to try to create projects from scratch, you will never get the skill you need to become a developer. It took me a long time to figure this out. So everybody I work with, I say at most you need 4 or 5 courses at most. I have 1,000 courses on Udemy. I only took like 10 of them, right? And I probably finished only like 6, maybe. So you only need like 4 or 5 courses. One HTML, and I'm going to talk from the standpoint of JavaScript and React and front end. You need one HTML and CSS course. You need one JavaScript course. You need one React course, and basically, and that's it. Understand the material in those courses. You don't need extra courses. Why don't you need extra courses? I will guarantee you, you could do this right now. Go on Udemy and pull up like 10 different React courses, and then go through the like the contents of what's inside the course. Go through the list, and you'll see they all talk about the same thing. So why have 5 different courses that teach you the same thing? You only need 3 courses. Once you fit, like, and I have a video, by the way, just search my channel, best learning strategy for programming, something like that. I'll have to like link it later. But the point is, once you complete one HTML and CSS course, do all the projects in the course, and then put the course away, and then work on your own project and see if you could build it from scratch. And if you can't, go review the material, then put the material away, then come back again, and then try to build a project again. So like, this is the approach that I would say. 1, learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and build one HTML, CSS, and JavaScript website. I'm kind of condensing everything. Actually, I'll come back to that in just a second. But basically, if you're not forcing yourself, 7 lines, to do projects from scratch, it'll be very, very difficult for you to be able to build anything from scratch. And this is why I always promote you should be building your own projects from scratch. And that's why I have the Tuesday night live stream, 9 p.m. Eastern time, where you basically watch me fail miserably building stuff from scratch, because I am trying to force myself to code on my own without the help of tutorials. And it's hard, but it takes practice. Like, there's another channel that I saw, this kid, Chris White, I think his name is. He's a funny dude, but he said, like, look, if you want to get better at playing baseball, watching baseball is not enough. You actually have to go out there and hit the ball. Same thing with coding. You got to do that. But we'll come back to it, because I want to talk about all these things that you have to do, the steps that you need to take that will increase your chance of getting hired, especially if you don't have a college degree, especially if you're switching careers, because you have to stand out. You have to figure out how to not only develop the skill, but promote yourself. And if you have questions about learning, you could always email me at codingafter30@gmail.com. I'll be more than happy to kind of give you some options that you could do to at least to figure out how to learn stuff in a way that makes sense, where you don't spend 3 to 5 years kind of in circles being stuck in tutorial hell. But in the most basics, pick a track. Number 2, learn the stack that is required. So to break into the field, as and I'm going to use the way I did it, which is learning React for front end. These are the things you need to know. You need to know HTML and CSS. You need to know JavaScript. You need to know React. You need to know what are APIs. You need to know how to consume an API, and then you have to know what CRUD is: create, read, update, and delete. And you should at least, you don't have to make the API yourself, but what you should be able to do, you should be able to use an API and implement full CRUD functionality. And then you should be familiar with GitHub, how to commit your code. And in the most sense, once you have that piece, next piece is you need to build portfolio projects. 3 projects I recommend. The first project is to showcase your HTML and CSS skills. And so let me switch my screen here. Is to showcase your HTML and CSS skills. So you could build something like a landing page. Like, this is a project that I built, and it should be responsive. You're using HTML and CSS that you write yourself. And JavaScript, you don't have to go too crazy. Like, I have this form here that, you know, has form validation. Oh, I'm zooming in like crazy. I don't know, like, my autocorrect, you could tell my real email there. You could email me at my real email too. It's no big deal. But the form basically checks if I'm missing a message. So let me type a message. Okay, I have a message. Now I could submit the form and all this other great stuff. Or I could reset the form. So this is basic JavaScript. Another thing here, JavaScript, is here, like, as you could see, when I scroll, the menu hides on scroll, right? And then when I stop scrolling, the menu shows up. So that's a basic example of JavaScript. It's also should be responsive, right? And another example where you could like see if I change it, I have this nice mobile view. So this should be your first project. And again, JavaScript, super simple of like, open the menu, close the menu, stuff like that. So very basic website. So your first website should be an HTML, CSS, and JavaScript website. This should be your first project. And I made a little portfolio site here. But what I would say for you guys, you could do anything you want. And I just recently at work had to make a landing page for our company, which I used Gatsby.js, but that was an overkill. I could have done it with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And basically, it could be a company website which says basic company information, and then it has basically some information about the company like this, and it has a working form where when people fill in the form, you capture their email. And by the way, that in itself, if you wanted to go and find clients, you could go ahead and offer that as a service. I'm not saying you should go freelancing before working in the industry for a while, but I'm just saying, like, think of the projects that you build should have some sort of utility that you're demonstrating a skill, and your website should look nice and professional. So that's your first project. So this will demonstrate your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Once you basically have this first project, that's it. Move on to the second project, right? Your next project should be something like this. Looks complex, but it's really not complex. It's basically a React application, and what it's doing, it's basically pulling information off a COVID tracker API, the cases of the crazy pandemic going on. And basically what this shows is that I understand that I could create a front end, and I understand that the data is stored somewhere in the back end in some sort of API. And so I am demonstrating here that I could query that data. And all this app does, it looks fancy, it really is not fancy. All this app is doing is just querying data from an API. So your second project could be something really simple. And I'll show you another one. This one I built myself, but I showed you one that I did from John Smilga's course, another similar project, which could be like a great second project. Just make sure you make it look fairly nice, because I don't know why, but people like pretty applications. Let me go to, Netlify. Because I have a bunch of stuff in Netlify, but I'll show you a couple other examples. So for your second, like your first project, HTML and CSS and JavaScript, your second project should be something where you're using an API. Ooh, that's my work stuff. Let me switch to my other stuff. Oh, you guys will see where I work. Oh no. And so here's one that is from John Smilga's course. I obviously didn't build this design from scratch or build it myself, but here's another much more cleaner example where you could build this with React, and you connect to some sort of API. This is connecting to a cocktail API, which will basically get recipes of cocktails. So if someone has a drink that they like, I don't know, bloody, I can't spell, Bloody Mary, right? See it. Oh, it's one. Bloody Mary has one. Ooh, Bloody Maria. Sounds like my ex. Never mind. Anyway, so the point is here, what this is doing, it's a basic front end, and what it's showcasing is that you understand that having a front end by itself is not enough. There are APIs that have some sort of data, and you should be able to get that data from the API. So this could be another project you could build. You could start it simple where you're only getting the data, and that's perfectly fine. And then for your final project, you could have a cornerstone project. This is a new project that I just started, and I'm building it on the Tuesday night live stream. And again, look at this professional look, and it should look good. And by the way, I'm using Tailwind, and I bought a template to make it look this pretty, right? Like, you don't have to do everything from scratch. But the point of this third application, and this is not done, this is work in progress, but on your third application, you guys basically want to showcase your deeper knowledge of development. So you should understand, you don't have to make the backend from scratch, but you should understand, concept of authentication, like I have here. Like, look, I want to authenticated. You could go and play, like this app doesn't have much functionality yet because we just started building it, but at least it has basic authentication. I could sign in and it will sign me in and take me to the dashboard. And then we have our teams, our users. Users right now is not being populated from the database, but teams is. So this Teams is coming from my API. Now, I didn't create the API myself. I'm really in love with Strappy. I love Strappy. I think Strappy, if someone wants to make a backend really, really fast in like literally a few minutes, using Strappy is great. I'll talk about it more. You could also learn about it by going to strappy.io.com. But this basically allows you to, you could learn more about it, but it basically allows you to create API really quickly that has an amazing UI layer already built in to help you guys, especially if you're just starting out, to get started. But your final project, right, would be something where you're looking to build full CRUD functionality. So for instance, here I have a way to create a team. You could add a team. I didn't implement the back logic yet. This is still working on the front end. But as you could see, this is going to have full CRUD functionality: create, read, update, and delete. So in the bare minimum, as a quick review, when you starting learning to code, number one, don't need to take 1,000 courses. Just take one HTML and CSS and JavaScript, one JavaScript. Hold on, let me rephrase that. One HTML and CSS course. Focus on responsive design. Number two, take a JavaScript course. Number three, take a React course. And now just build stuff. So your first project should be a basic HTML and CSS and JavaScript site, being fully responsive. Number two, you should make some sort of project that, I know this looks fancy, but like I mentioned, all it does is just queries data based on the country and it displays that data. It's basically a glorified display app of pandemic cases by country. And so basically this, you're now showing that you know how to create front end with React, but you also understand this concept of APIs and how to be able to connect to an API, even just to get most simple data. And then your cornerstone project is going to be more advanced, more polished, and it's going to be your cornerstone project, as I call it, where you basically have a project, and this is, again, this is still in development, so don't be like, oh, it's not fully done, but I just want to show an example, and this is what we're building on our Tuesday night stream at 9 p.m. Eastern time. But you want to have an application where you're showcasing and handling authentication. And again, you don't have to make the backend logic yourself. You could use something like Strappy or Contentful. There's a bunch of different CMSs that are available, but this way you should showcase that you know how login works, you understand basic concept of JW tokens, and then you want to create a full CRUD application where you're able to create, read, update, and delete. Like for instance, I'm getting data from the API. I didn't integrate like this functionality yet, but you'll be able to create a team, you'll be able to invite members to a team. But the point is, you want to have a more polished app as a final project. As you guys could see here, it starts to add up. But if you try to build like a bunch of little projects, no, just have an outline. These are the 3 projects I have to build. You put them in your portfolio, and now you could start focusing. Like, look, I have these projects in my portfolio, right? 3 projects, and now I'm able to move on to the next step, which is promoting myself, getting ready for interviews, and doing all that great stuff. And again, I know I'm kind of flying through this, but I want to give you kind of all the other important stuff here. And let me look at the comments here. But Jose, I don't remember if I said hello. Hello, Jose. Yeah, so here's a great question, 7 lines. So for your initial project, right, for your first HTML and CSS JavaScript website, this should all be custom CSS you're writing, right? This project will showcase that you understand HTML and CSS. You could use BAM with semantic meanings, whatever the patterns you like, as long as it's consistent, clean to read, and you are basically here demonstrating your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript skills, right? But then when you move to your next application, React, now I wrote all the CSS myself, but this is where you could start to be like, okay, I know CSS already, I know like the basics, let me use Sass, right? You could use like Sass here. You just try to level up a little bit. But by the time you get to this third project, your main project, picking up like React, Bootstrap, or in this case, I'm using Tailwind or another CSS framework is really good because you're adding to your skill. You already know CSS, you know the basics, so there's no point of recreating the wheel. And believe it or not, in majority of the places that you work, they have UI libraries that you're going to be using. So very like seldomly are you going to be creating that stuff from scratch, especially if you're starting as a junior developer. So this is why I talk about then for your third project, instead of focusing on how to do everything yourself from scratch, you focus on how to put everything together into a final project that you deploy, and that looks really good, that you could show your potential employers. So let me look at all this great stuff here, blah, blah, blah. Responsive design is the hardest part for me. CSS, yeah, it takes a little bit of practice, but, you know, just work through it. Some emoji face, very nice. Bob, my first SWE interview at American Express last Friday, but learned that I need to improve my soft skills. It's a process. Yeah, soft skills are so super important, and I will talk more about that because, believe it or not, that will be a higher reason why people hire you than you think it is, right? It's so important because and bang, like, by the way, it happens to the best of us. I failed more interviews that I didn't, just to put that in perspective. But the good news, the interview that you don't fail, at least you get the job. So if you have 100 fails, 1,000 fails, you only need one successful interview to land the job. So that's how I make it positive from my standpoint. Yeah, but nobody likes to fail or be rejected, but I like that you got some feedback and you kind of know what you need to work on. And then soft skills, super important, and we'll talk more about that for sure. And yeah, keep grinding. Yeah, that's all we could do, by the way. That's like, we could either quit completely or just take as a learning lesson and continue and keep grinding. By the way, if you guys didn't smash the like button, you don't have to, but if you are going to, I highly appreciate it because it helps others to find the most amazing, this is probably not the most amazing channel, but whatever. It helps others to discover my content. So we talked about the basics. We talked about pick a path. Fantastic. We talked about learn the tech that you need. Don't get caught up in, you know, how many courses you have on Udemy, because I have bajillion courses on Udemy. Like I'll show you a big mistake just because you guys are here. I have 2 Udemy accounts. I'm not going to go too crazy. I'm going to show you one, but they both have similar amount of courses. So my learning, right? Let's see. How many courses do I have here? So this is 233 courses, right? But this is not like, that's not counting the courses that are archived. You look at archived, I have 31 archived courses plus, let's see, non-archived courses. So this account has over like 260 courses. I could have saved thousands of dollars by just sticking to 4 courses that I mentioned: HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and React. And I could have just start building stuff from scratch. I would have been way ahead of the game. This is just the distraction of having all this stuff, especially when you're starting out. And most of these courses I didn't finish. Some of them I didn't even start. Like only now, like literally listening to the courses when I sleep, just to kind of get my money's worth at this point. But don't make that mistake of, you know, wasting time by being stuck in tutorial hell, and you got to start building stuff from scratch. Let me look at the comments here. I love it. I love it. Everybody wants to chat. How important is it to learn data structure algorithms to be successful in an interview? Jonah, this is a very fantastic question. Here's what I'm going to tell you, and this is my opinion and my belief. It has worked for me. It has worked for other people. Unless you're applying to FANG, which specifically tests you on algorithm data structures, which is like Facebook, Amazon, blah, 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 and start fancy company name there. Majority of the companies, their interview process, and like, okay, when I say the majority, you can't tell. Every company is different. Some companies will grill you in front of the whiteboard, and some companies, and this is what I prefer, will basically ask you to build something as part of their interview. And to me, that makes more sense because you're literally demonstrating to them that you're able to do the job that you're being hired for. So my last interview, they literally told me, build this full stack application using this technology. And I'm like, okay. And so I did it, and then I was able to talk about the code. And the reason why I start the answer this way is because these are the, and we'll get more into it, but these are the bare minimums before learning data structures and algorithms is you need to, in my opinion, you need to be able to have the skill to build something. So if you don't have at least a portfolio with 3 projects, like a basic, great looking website that you could build yourself from scratch, some sort of application. Looks fancy, but it's just getting the cases of pandemic by country, right? Nothing too fancy. And then you want to have one application which showcases authentication, the basic CRUD functionality. Again, you don't have to make the API yourself, but all this shows that I'm able to do my job as a developer. If someone, when you start working, they're not going to, especially as a junior level developer on the front end, they're not going to tell you to solve this crazy solution. They have the hire developers to do that stuff, but your goal is to be able to implement it by building, right? And so as a junior, it's not that important. So in my opinion, the most important thing to do is to learn how to build stuff. Now, once you build stuff and you have a portfolio, no, don't start learning data structures and algorithms yet, because comes to the next part that I'm going to show you, because you need to set up your online presence to be able to market yourself as a developer. So before you start going crazy with data structures, algorithms, if you don't have a LinkedIn, right? No point, because people can't find you. You're not even going to be getting interviews. So the first thing you want to do is set up your LinkedIn. By the way, when you start your journey as a developer learning, you need to have a GitHub and you need to have some serious history. It doesn't matter if the code here is good or bad. No one's going to really look and with a comb, pick, whatever, check every commit. But they want to see is that you're involved. Like if I'm a developer, I'm going to be involved in developing, right? And so you want to have GitHub set up and you want to show that you have history. And you want to set up what I call and I bought a template. I didn't build this from scratch, guys. Just listen, this is a beautiful template that I got from React Made. I set up really easy. This is what I call your kind of business card website. It should have some basic information about you. It should have the tech that you're either learning, want to learn, just get it out there. By the way, when I made this website, I did not know half the stuff, but what I did is I wrote it down anyway, and I used it as a roadmap of the stuff that I wanted to learn and to continue learning. And then you have your resume. If you don't have experience yet, I'll show you how to later. And I have a great live stream I did. Just Google resume coding after 30 on YouTube. You're going to find a bunch of live streams I did where I talk about how to write a resume in this type of style format. And I talk about where I have one resume, which is actual work experience. And then I have a same resume that looks very similar format like this. And I'll show you guys in a second. What my actual resume looks like, just to give you an idea, where I just talked about my projects that I built. I don't call them personal projects. I just call them projects that I built, right? Because you're still coding at the end of the day. If they are professional level projects, you should be proud of them. Like you put it on your resume. And I not in this video because this is going to get 10-hour video, but I'll talk more. I'll make a designated video again, how to write a resume when you have no experience. But you need to have, before you even start diving deep into algorithm data structures, you need to have these basic things in place to show people that you are a developer. So you need to have what I call a business card website. This is a theme that I bought. You need to have a LinkedIn, right? For sure. If you're not a software developer yet, you could still write software developer. You just won't have any job history. Don't use words like inspiring. Inspiring, that's what children do. And I know it sounds cool, but if I see, or if you write inspiring web developer, I talk to recruiters, they just don't take you seriously, right? You need to have a LinkedIn, and obviously you need to have GitHub, right? And you need to be consistent. I just want to show you that I'm not like some amazing guy that got my shit figured out, because I started GitHub in 2013, and like most people, I spent too much time watching YouTube, not doing anything. So 2013, 2014, 2015, I did not apply myself at all. 2016, I did not apply myself at all. That's 4 years wasted. And then 2017, I was around 37 years old, 36 years old. I still didn't apply myself, right? So I started to focus in 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021. You could see, man, I
I got serious about breaking into the field. I started doing the work. And so you need to have this history on GitHub. When people go, like I said, they're not going to look at every particular project, but they're going to see that you have some commits and stuff that you're involved, right? And another thing that I recommend is when you're starting out, you should, and this is set up with WordPress, by the way. I didn't build this from scratch, but having a website where you could, and look, I don't have that many articles, but let me tell you, when I interviewed for my last job, I showcased some of these articles, kind of showing like, look, I publish articles about coding, even if it's something simple. So I wrote an article how to fetch and filter and render data in JavaScript. But basically, you could make little articles where you could share what you're learning, and you can basically share this stuff on LinkedIn, so people will see that, hey, he says he's a React developer, or even though you might not have a job, and look, all his articles that he's posting are related to the work that he wants to do. And I learned this trick from a friend of mine, Vahid, and he, like, look, he posts Python videos. He started with React before. I did a live stream with him. I have to post it. I'm so terrible. This was so long ago. It's a really great live stream with him, but I'll post it soon. I just, outside these live streams, I didn't have any time. But anyway, look at it. He's posting tutorial videos. So if someone comes in here, they'll look at his profile, what, let's click on his profile. Linguist and data analyst, that's what he does. They scroll through his feed, they see some of his experience certificate, but like I showed you earlier, when they search his name, look at the content that comes up. It's all videos showcasing that, look, he knows Python, he's showing tutorials in Python, so it's a great way to start to build authority. So you could either do videos, you could do little blogs, but the point is you just share it on LinkedIn to kind of, when a recruiter comes to your LinkedIn, it looks like not a bunch of cat videos, but stuff that's related to the job that you want to get. And this is what I'm trying to get at. And so self-promoting yourself and doing those things is super important. Let me look at the comments first before I get too wild and out of control. And so this is like a long tangent to answer how important it is to learn data structure and algorithm to be successful in an interview. And so the answer to that is, if you're not getting interviews because you don't have let me switch back to screen. If you're not getting interviews because no one can't find you, because you don't have a personal website that talks about what you do, you don't have a LinkedIn, right? Let me go to my LinkedIn profile here. You don't have a LinkedIn profile where people could find you. You don't have, like, this is all searchable, right? You don't have a resume that I'm going to talk about. And, by the way, you guys are more than team oriented. That's spelled correctly. What are you talking about? Oh, they want it like that. Nah, whatever. But if you want to look at my resume as an example, you're more than welcome to. This resume, I have a lot of amazing feedback from recruiters, people that hired me. They're like, oh, your resume looks good. So not even like, it's the format that's important, right to the point, what you want, right? Your skills, keywords that of all the skills that, and I'm not proficient in all of, I'm not like an expert in all of these, but these are all the technologies I worked for, right? CSS frameworks, non-technical stuff, super important. And then when you write about your experience, and this could be about the job you had or about the project you built, you have to write it in these accomplishments, like translated Figma mockups into clean and reusable React UI components. Utilize GraphQL API to perform CRUD functionality to update. It has to be bulleted points. If you're not doing bullet points, you got to do bullet points of actionable descriptions of what you accomplished at your work, because all of this is searchable. So if you don't have a resume like this, learning algorithm data structure is not going to help you, because if you don't have this first stuff in place, you're probably not getting interviews yet. Now, once you have this stuff in place and you're getting interviews, every interview you go to, you try to figure out what can you do better. And when you are getting interviews, this is when you start doing interview prep. You start looking over data structures and algorithms. You start looking into, don't tell me my mouse is about to die. You start looking into, improving your interview skills by looking up and studying the most 30 common interview questions for React or what have you. That's when you start doing all this stuff, once you're actually able to get interviews. But if you're not getting interviews, you have your work cut out for you, because you have a bunch of stuff that you don't have yet that doesn't give people enough confidence to take you seriously when you're looking for interviews. So bare minimum, personal website, what you do. This is your business card website. And if you have any questions about anything in particular, let me know, but I'm kind of flying through this. A LinkedIn, right? You should have a LinkedIn, and I didn't build this overnight. It took time, right? And I have some great recommendations, which I'll talk about later, why it's important to have recommendations, because it gives you social proof. And you need to have history on your GitHub that you're working on stuff. This is 2022, this is 2021, it doesn't matter. But the point is, you have to have these things in place, and you have to have a written resume. And as a bonus, if you could write few articles, doesn't have to be that crazy, where you could say, I published some stuff about coding that you could share on LinkedIn. It will give you a level of authority that people will take it more seriously, and you will start getting interviews. Once you're getting interviews, that's when you start focusing on interview prep. Like, don't do the cart before the horse, if you know what I mean. So let me look at some additional questions before I get carried away. So 7line says, what's tough for me is after spending months of learning React, going ahead to Vanilla.js looks foreign language to me. So much code to what React can do in a few lines. And you know what? 100%. And if you saw my video, React versus JavaScript, this is why I tell you, like, React will make you be more productive and be able to get to a job way faster. And let me tell you this, my React is probably better than my JavaScript. But I still go back and learn more JavaScript. Like, you have to understand, learning to code is going to be your full-time learning journey for the rest of your life if you're going to be a developer. So the point is, it's okay. What you're describing, React will be less foreign to you than JavaScript. That's for most people, by the way. Like, if people have been spending 2 years working with React, to go back and build something with vanilla JavaScript, they're going to have to review stuff. That's not just you, my man. That's a lot of people. That's true. That's true yeah, Udemy master. I'm like a Udemy disaster. That's what I am. And here, I'm very bad at CSS. So yeah, CSS actually, like, at first I thought, like, JavaScript would be harder than CSS. It's like, CSS. And then, like, the more I work with CSS, like, that's really hard. You know what I mean? So don't feel bad about it. As long as here's the thing, when you know basics of CSS, and you basically understand what everything is from the standpoint, you might not be able to make something from scratch, but at least you could go and look it up. That's half the battle. So whatever you don't know how to do with a certain basic fundamental foundation of, like, CSS, JavaScript, you'll be able to find the answer. And if you could find the answer, look it up, that means you're on a good path. You're able to start going and looking to get hired. Not inspired. Yep, years. I'm just like, I'm reading out of context. There's hope for me yet. No, 7 lines, of course. Hope for everybody yet. Hope for everybody. You guys could do this. If you want to do this, do it. The only thing I would tell you, if you don't like coding and it's going to be really hard to stick with it. But if you enjoy it, you really like it, then stick with it. You guys are going to get to where you guys are going in. So what I would tell you, another great question, Elpin Price, is knowing Redux critical for. So what I would say, do not do Redux. I just have it there because I learned it at some point. I use it on a project. But if you are starting out, literally just learn native features of React, context API, how to use hooks, build a bunch of products. You won't even need Redux. And literally most companies, like, you will, if you understand JavaScript, if you understand so I'll tell you this, by the way, if you know context API in React and you understand how to use their use reducer hook and then following that pattern, learning Redux will be much easier than learning Redux first. I made that mistake trying to learn Redux first, confused the living daylights out of me. So no, it's not required, especially now. Before, React didn't have good state management in terms of context API. The initial implementation was really buggy, but nowadays you don't even need Redux in majority of projects. If you don't know what problem Redux solves, you don't need it. Like, in majority of my projects, I don't even use Redux anymore. So what's a day in life of a web developer? Do you work crazy hours, like more than 4? No, I just work 40 hours. Is it full, super demanding deadlines? It depends on the company. I know every job is different, but just curious. Yeah, it's basically the cool thing about development is that most companies, it's not like they crack the whip and like what, maybe like in video game design, but all the companies that I work for, even if they do have crazy deadlines, like your 8 hours is your 8 hours. Like I've never been expected to work more hours unless I wanted to, you know what I mean? So in most companies, especially in the tech industry, I think it's important for people, especially in a lot of these like tech companies. They're very modern in their like approach of what they think a workspace should be. So they want to make sure that you work your 40 hours a week and you are able to find that great life and work balance, because they know if you're living life where your work and your personal life is balanced, you're going to be more productive employer. So it's really not that like stressful in terms of that side. What's stressful is when you first start, you feel like you don't know anything. But that's a different question. But you're still working only your 40 hours a week. Tech Rally copied my resume, but it's okay because I like, I showed it to him. I said, hey, you're more than welcome to use it. But that template, I bought it somewhere. I don't remember. I think it's I forgot what it is, but there's plenty of great templates out there. You don't even have to buy one. I just like too lazy to create myself. The most important part is how you write those bullet points. But I love Tech Rally. He's the greatest. But yeah, I told him he could use my resume as an example, and he could use it. And all of you guys could use my resume as a template to help you guys get ahead. Like I just want you guys to succeed. And so can the articles be superficial? What I would say, like not superficial in terms of where you just put a lot of fluffer stuff, but it could be like something simple, how to make a fetch request with JavaScript, and you just have one function that shows the fetch request and the context of where you used it. So it could be like a, one paragraph article, and at the same time, you could actually use that as notes for yourself. That's fine as long as it's not fluff, but being concise and clear, perfectly. I don't think internships are just for college students. If not, would you recommend it? If you can't get hired, getting an internship is better than nothing, because that's going to give you the most valuable thing, which is experience. So I started with a free internship that eventually changed into a paid internship that eventually changed into a job, and then eventually allowed me to go farther down. So I'm saying, try both. Go try to get hired. But at the same time, if you find an internship that makes sense, take the internship, because the experience is the most important thing you could do. So not like, so basically think of it as, clear, concise, and fast. So the point of, that's a great question, by the way. Do you, um, how detailed articles should you have? So you have to think of it. A lot of people don't have time, so you want to make easily consumable stuff. So even my articles that I wrote, they're a little bit too lengthy. So like something that's super easy. If you have like 10 things you want to like talk about, do 10 little posts. Think of it like one, like it's called micro blogging. I think that's what it's called. Like very short, one concept, one thing, how you use it, the context, and just put it out on YouTube, on blog, and then share it on LinkedIn. Super simple stuff. And you see, like, if you follow a bunch of people on LinkedIn, you see a lot of people share articles, and they're literally like 1 minute, 2 minute reads, because nobody got the time to read 3 minutes, but at the same time, like 10 minutes. But at the same time, what you're doing is you're building authority, you're sharing that you're part of the community, you're giving back to the community in some way. Maybe like somebody already knows how to do that, but there might be somebody who doesn't, and they'll see your article and be very helpful. But at the same time, like I showed you earlier with my friend Vahid on his LinkedIn, it sets up a level of authority that you guys have. And here's another thing why writing little short articles and describing the code, why it's important, because you're learning about talking and reasoning about the code. Because if you think about what is an interview is you talking about the code that you wrote. And here's another reason why I cannot tell you enough. Stop doing tutorials. Just stop cold turkey and start building something from scratch. Even if you fail miserably, the code that you will eventually write on your own yourself you'll be able to talk about it very easily. There's no, like, I could show you a course. I mean, let's say I was starting out, like now, like my understanding of JavaScript is pretty good. And so I could look at somebody else's code and get an idea what it's doing. But let's say I was just starting out. I could do a tutorial, right? And I could get it done. It might look really good. It might work. But then when someone asks me questions about like, why did you use this function? I might not have an answer because I didn't write it. I copied an instructor writing that code. But if you build a project from scratch yourself, right? And you wrote the code yourself, and like the code yourself, it didn't work. And then you have to troubleshoot it. You have to Google stuff, and then you refactored the code. You worked on that code for such a long time. You're like, man, I'm not gonna forget what this code does. And you're going to be able to talk about your code, reason about it. And so by writing these micro articles, sharing what you're learning is reinforcing not only what you're learning, but it's reinforcing your ability to talk about coding because you have to write it. When you write something, you think it, and then you write it. And so you're kind of repeating and you're practicing. This is why I do the Tuesday night live stream. I don't make any money on YouTube. It's a waste of time for me to do YouTube, except the fact that, number one, I love chatting with you, but number two, when I do my Tuesday night live stream, I'm glad that some of you guys are joining, but if nobody was joining, I would still do it. Why? Because by coding live on YouTube, I'm basically practicing talking about the code that I'm writing, and I'm building that experience of getting comfortable talking about code. So when I go to an interview, I may not have the right answer, but I'm confident about talking my code because I know and I practiced it. So I hope it still makes sense. And Jose has a question. Do you still suggest start with React and then focus on JS? No, you start HTML and CSS. That's your first course in Udemy. Second course is JavaScript. You need to know the basics of JavaScript, but once you complete the first course, you know the basics of it. You know how to work with arrays, with objects. You know how to work with promises and async, and you know the basics. Then you move on to React. And whenever you get stuck in React because you feel like you're reaching a limit of your JavaScript knowledge, you could take a step back. You could learn that thing in JavaScript and then go back to React. But at the end of the day, you want to push your progress forward so you could be productive with React. I hope that answered your question. Yep. Look, would getting email developer position be a bad luck for other positions? No, it wouldn't, because you're still doing relatable stuff. So sometimes, like, and this is what Coding Phase talks about all the time. And he's amazing because he's the first one to talk about all of this stuff. Because what I love about Coding Phase, besides his real, no BS advice, is that he figured out that, a lot of people, they want to get the job as a developer. But the point is, there's so many other jobs that are developer related, such as an email dev job, that you could get with less time of learning, and you could get paid to work and learn more. And so I love his approach, and I think that you should apply to all different jobs, not just the job that you want, because any job you get, your first job is going to be great experience for you. So my first job was working with PHP and WordPress, and I didn't even do that much PHP. It was mostly like fixing HTML and CSS errors, and once in a while writing some PHP stuff, but very bare minimum. And it counted for experience. It helped me get my next job. So this is important. So definitely not. And Seven Line says, do you do one-on-one mentoring like tech? I stopped. I don't do one-on-one tech mentoring because it's hard for me to find time. And also, like, there will be like, I don't want to, like, I used to do them for free, but I don't have time anymore. And to charge, I would have to charge a lot of money, which will make no sense. Not because I want to charge a lot of money, but because you only have 24 hours in a day. If I already have a lot on my plate, the time that I have available would be so. I don't do that, unfortunately, right now. The one thing that I'm going to do, by the way, because it has to be a win-win situation for everybody. So I know that a lot of people love the content that I do. So what I might bring up, I'm thinking about it. So I'm glad, Seven Lines, that you brought that up, is that I will do one-on-ones, but they will be publicly aired on YouTube. So if you don't mind coming on a live stream and doing one-on-one with me on the YouTube channel, that way I'm not just helping you. And those I'll do for free because you're helping me out to create more content. But the beauty of that is you're going to get your one-on-one, but then also other people could benefit from your one-on-one that people are able to see on YouTube. So I'm going to bring that up eventually. I don't know when. Right now, I have so much stuff going on at work, but I might figure out within the next couple of weeks a day where I'll be like, okay, first come, first serve. You could do one-on-ones with me, but they're going to be recorded, and then I'm going to make a video out of it. So if you don't mind that, I think that's one way that I could make time to do that. Yeah, and 100%. You know, anytime you think about how to reiterate what you did, you're basically practicing your learning and you're practicing understanding and reiterating to yourself the code that you wrote, which makes you better at it. And then, Nash, what's up, my man or girl? I can't tell because Nash could be anybody, name, whatever. Anyway, I just want to make sure that I call people how they are feel comfortable with. But Nash, what's up? Great to have you here. And Jose, great idea about the one-on-ones on YouTube. Yeah, I think I'm gonna start doing that. By the way, also like another great stream because you could ask questions. You know, and again, it's coding live, so it's never perfect. But I do the Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern time stream where we're building our amazing project that we started, a new one, which I'll talk about more. But yeah, so there's a lot of stuff that and a lot of steps that you have to take. But so I showed you. Let me quickly do a quick review for those of you guys who are just joining what we talked about. So I talked about number one, like picking a path, and you can't do everything. So if you do Python, do Python. If you do, you know, ASP.NET, do with C#, do ASP.NET. If you do React, do React. But for your first job, don't try to combine everything together. Have a clear path, and the way you discover that path, you search what are the most common tech paths in your area that you live and learn that. Number two, once you know what you want to learn, pick no more than 5 courses on Udemy or whatever resource you want to do. So in my case, learning React was HTML and CSS course, 1 JavaScript course, 1 React course. You know, that's more than enough. Maybe 1 course how to work with APIs, whatever, doesn't matter. 4 courses at the most. And then what you need to do is complete all those courses, build all the projects and courses. But after you're done with all the courses, you need to build 3 projects for your portfolio. And the projects that I recommend, here's some clear examples. Here is 1 basic HTML and CSS and JavaScript site. The whole point of this project here to show that you understand how to write CSS and HTML, you know, basics of JavaScript for some of these basic events, like, you know, this, the menu auto hide and open on scroll and a bunch of other different examples like this. And then this basically showcases, you know, CSS, you know, HTML, you know, basic JavaScript, you know, responsive. Number 2, next application, use like React. And then the point here is to be able to showcase that you know basics of React, and you're showing that this idea that you're introducing to concept of working with APIs. So this looks fancy. This is not fancy. This is glorify app that basically only allows you to select a country, and it makes a call to an API that has this data, and I'm basically barfing up this data onto the front end here. But basically, this is an introduction to showcasing, okay, look, I know the basics of React, and I understand that the data lives somewhere in the cloud, so I'm going to be working with APIs. And you just work on getting a GET request and displaying that data. If you want it to be fancy, you could add some filtering, right? Once you've done that, your final project should be like a CRUD application with some basic authentication. You don't need to build everything from scratch. In this case, for my backend, I'm using Strapi. I love Strapi. You could learn about it at strapi.io, but it's my go-to for many reasons, which I'm not going to get into this video because otherwise I'll talk for forever. Why Strapi for me is one of the best CMSs in general, but also why anybody who's learning development, why they should use Strapi. Because in my case, it's been integral part because the code is available, it's open source, it's highly customizable. So you're able to transition into node development one piece at a time by extending existing application of Strapi, and they have a lot of great documentation. They have great examples of how to do that. And then it actually helped me to become better at Node, weirdly enough. But your third application should be your cornerstone project. You should have some sort of authentication. Again, you don't have to do it yourself. And then for your third project, you don't have to write CSS yourself. If anything, pick Bootstrap or Tailwind. In this case, I'm using Tailwind, a template I also purchased to make it look really nice because I'm more curious about functionality rather than how it looks, but it should look beautiful. And so for your third project, use the power of somebody else's design, because at the end of the day, you're more focused on the functionality. So this is the new application that I'm working on. I'm working on it on a Tuesday night stream, 9 p.m. Eastern time, but this is not done yet. So I don't have too much to show here, but it's basically getting data from the Strappy API, and I'm going to implement full crowd functionality. I'm also going to implement a way to invite new members via email, which, whatever. The whole point is, you create those three projects: basic HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, showcases your basics of programming. Second, you create a React application that showcases basics of React and the fact that you know that this concept of API, even if it's just making a GET request, getting data and populating on screen. And thirdly, your cornerstone project is where you show more advanced things like, I understand that there's this idea of create, read, update, delete, that data should be saved to a database. How do I work with an API? That should be your final project. Once that's done, and maybe before you even do that, you want to set up I'm going to just quickly go through this quick overview for you guys. Set up what I call this your business card site. And again, you want to create this before you even do anything, because when I wrote this, right, I didn't even know half the stuff. But this kind of helped me to create a roadmap of what I needed to learn for myself to continue moving forward. So I use this as a reference, but you want to have a basic website. You might not have a resume right away. There's a way that you could write about your, don't call it personal projects, but about your projects that you do. And you could literally describe them in this resume form, and no one will know the difference. Was it from a job? Was it from a project that you built at home? You also need to have a LinkedIn, very important, because this is where you're going to find people. You want to create a LinkedIn. Most importantly, you want to make sure that you have GitHub. Start GitHub right away, and then get a blog site set up, or write a couple of articles posted on Medium. Doesn't have to be a lot of them. Don't have to go crazy, but you want to create some content that you could share on LinkedIn. And I showed you the example of my friend Vahid, who is a data analyst, and he's working on creating projects with Python. So what he does, let me see, where do you see posts here? Recent activity. Activity, show all activity. Let me see here. But as you can see, he's basically putting out videos on, wait, he's sharing a lot of my stuff. Let me come back here. I showed a previous example, but here it is. I think it's going to show. Look, he's putting out content relative to what he's learning. He's putting out videos about Python. He has a YouTube channel about Python. I'm not saying you guys have to do this. Go to YouTube here. Let me pause it here. Go to his channel. He has Pythonology. He changed his name, Python and stuff. Fantastic channel. Look, he's sharing videos of stuff he's doing. So he's basically being involved in the community, and that's growing his authority. And wow, his subscriber base is growing. Amazing. Go subscribe to his channel, by the way. And so it's a combination of all these things. And then writing a resume, you could follow this template that I have here. The most important part when you write your resume, you understand that a lot of people use other resume readers. So you want to make sure that you're using the most common relevant terms in search, not only in the left side, but also in your bullet point descriptions. And everything has to be like an action step of what you accomplished. If your resume doesn't have bullet points or in this format, it's not a good resume, because I made that mistake. I wasn't getting any views. I rewrote my resume to match this format, same information, and I started getting interviews. And by the way, I had recruiters look at this. No one's complaining about my resume yet. So I know, in terms of proof of concept for you guys, follow as an example, this is a great start for you. And it's basically action type of stuff. Wrote maintainable and reusable code using latest ES6, JavaScript, and React features. Implemented React Router for navigation and fetch time. So it's like what you did and what you accomplished is how you want to set this stuff up. And once you have this in place, now you're going to start getting interviews, and that's when you focus on doing interview prep. If you need to do more data structures, you do more data structures. If you need to look up more common questions about JavaScript because that's where you fail, that's what you're going to do. But that's the process that I recommend. And let me kind of check here. And what's a great idea for a beginner CRUD app? And Web Dev Junkie, by the way, has an amazing channel. You could learn a lot from him. He's actually a very good developer. He has really good content, so check out his channel. But for me, for a beginner CRUD app, weirdly enough, like people make fun of to-do app, but if you really think about, any website is basically a glorified to-do. So creating anything where it doesn't have to be a to-do app, but creating any application where you're able to create data, read data, update, or delete, where you're basically learning about how to do the get, post, put, and I already said post, and and how to. And again, you don't have to make the API yourself. Like I used, what's it called? Not JS server, like placement, whatever. Like you could run it natively, like in your application. I forgot what the npm package was, but you don't have to even create your own API, but just understand how to implement CRUD from your front end, even if you're writing it to a dummy API. One thing I would say is that don't get too caught up with like stuff like Firebase or fancy stuff, like because if you look at most of the job listings, a lot of them don't talk about some of the either bleeding edge tech or things like Firebase, unless it's specifically to companies that use Firebase. But look at the stuff where, like, most of the stuff is like React, JavaScript, SQL type database, right? And only stick to the technologies which you see on the job listing. The biggest mistake I made is trying to learn everything. But the truth is, it's like, look in your area for job listings, see what they're looking and hiring for, and make sure that's the tech you're doing. We all have 24 hours in a day. And so if you're learning extra stuff that's not leading you to getting your job, you're wasting time. So I'm very big at saying no. Like one example, Cody, Web Dev Junkie, he actually hooked me up with an opportunity to do a job for Angular, and I went to the interview, and I got in touch with, actually didn't even, I had a phone brief call. I didn't even go to a full interview because I basically said, look, I'm more looking for a React job. I'm not the strongest at Angular, and to be honest with you, I don't want to, step outside of my wheelhouse and to do Angular. And it's fine to say no because there's plenty of opportunities in React. And so I decided to just stick with React. There's nothing wrong with that. So saying no to things is actually a very important strategy. I don't have a newsletter, but I am on Twitter poorly. I'm very bad on social media. So basically I just, it's very easy. I stream on Saturday, 9 p.m. Eastern time, and Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern time. And then I'm a co-host. We took a little break because of all this craziness going on, but it's going to start at some point. I'm a co-host on Coding Addicts Power Hour podcast. You could find it on Spotify or on YouTube. And I would recommend Apple, but I know Apples are expensive, so there's nothing wrong with doing Windows. But I think the cheapest Apple, unless you buy it used, is $1,200, which is ridiculous. And if you want to buy anything that's up than that, it's $2,500, which is ridiculously silly to me. So it doesn't matter if you have a Windows or Mac. If you could have a Mac, get a Mac, but it's just not realistic all the time. I first started on a Windows computer just because Macs were so expensive. So basically the best laptop is the one that you could do your work on. That would be my answer. So, Paul, how do you get the energy to keep coding after work? I have been working for a year now as a dev and have become lazy to upskill after work. Previously, comment got deleted for some reason. Oh, I didn't see it. Sorry. No, like to me, I'm afraid that I'm going to get fired. And so that's why I'm afraid to be complacent because I feel like, damn, if I stop learning, I'm going to become like stop being relevant. And I'm like going to be 42 years old. Like the last thing I want to do is get complacent where I'm not able to kind of level up at my job. So for me, that's my motivation I have. But once um, get a job, what I would say, you could do less learning on your own at home. And sometimes, like, it depends where you work. Like, sometimes you're learning a lot at your job, and that might be significantly enough of upkeep to have you progress. So it really depends on your environment. Like, but for me, that's kind of where I find the energy is just out of fear, out of fear. Um, you got a video showing your setup, like your layout, great quality camera and mic. I mean, I don't. I don't see why that would be useful to anybody to show my setup. At the end of the day, like, why do you care? You guys only get a job. I'm not saying it to be mean about it. I'm just saying, like, I personally don't find value in like the videos that I see on YouTube. Like, this is my home office. Check out my setup. They're trendy. They get a lot of views, or uh, day in life of a dev. But why do you care? Like, you're not. Are you making YouTube content? And like, no, I mean, if you are, like, I guess my point is, I only want to show you the most relevant stuff that I think is going to help you get a job. And for me, showing my setup, it's not going to help you get a job, right? And so that's why I don't do it. But and I probably will never make a video about my setup. I think, like, to me, when people make a video, check out my office, they're basically saying, check out how cool I am and look at the cool shit I have that you don't have. Because I'm more successful than you. Why the hell would I make a video like that? To me, I might try to make a video where I'm giving you actionable steps to be able to get a job or make that career switch or whatever. I know some people are interested, so I might be a little bit insensitive, but that's where I'm coming from on that value. But I will tell you, which laptop are you using? I have a Mac Mini desktop computer. That I bought after my Windows computer crashed, and because it's good for video editing, and it was $1,200, which I think is still expensive. I got a Mac Mini, and for my web dev stuff on the go, I have a MacBook Pro, which was the 2013 version that I also bought for $1,200 because I refuse to spend and pay the Apple tax if I don't have to. But if I do get a new job, I hope they give me a computer. I hope they give me a computer, right? Because I hear a lot of people that are learning to. Everybody that I hear gets jobs. They always get cool laptops. I'm like, man, I didn't get a laptop with my first job. I'm trying to learn to code, but everything, I'm assuming, yeah, it's hard to do that. Like, you gotta. I don't know how you're able to manage that, but yeah, like. That's tough. That's tough. Learn everything. But yeah, so I talked about basic overview, everything. You could always rewatch this video. If you haven't smashed the like button, smash the like button. But let's just do some chatting. Let's talk more questions. I know you guys, I love having your questions. And let's do like a Wild Wild West type of comments. You guys could ask me anything. We talk about like relatable stuff is great, about coding, but you could ask me anything. Seven Line says, working remote, I think it's helpful for when we do remote interview. Imagine coming across granny with crappy mic quality might not come across great. So, like, I get your point, but at the same time, it's like, if I told you, like, the mic I have, this is my mic. I don't know what brand it is. It's Hale brand, whatever it is. And you got a super awesome mic, and you got a super awesome camera, and you spent all this money, but you still suck at doing the interview, right? It didn't help you. You could spend $50 for $50 and headphones with a microphone like this, right? You could get like a normal, like, I remember, so I was traveling with my fiance, and all I had was my MacBook. I had not even these headphones. I had crappy headphones, and I had my MacBook camera and I did an interview with that, nobody cares. Nobody's going to be like, oh my God, your setup is so amazing, because no one's going to hire you unless you're doing like creative stuff. No one's going to hire you about your setup. Like people just want to know, can you do the work? And I've been on interviews where the camera was grainy and like I did some Zoom calls, like the person that I was talking to, where he was living, they had a power outage, so he was literally working off his battery on his laptop, and he was interviewing me. So like the point is, it's not so much like, oh, like it's like I call that like creating problems when they don't exist. Like everybody thinks like, oh, they need better gear. Oh, I need more courses, or I need to like do this. Or I need to. No, you just have to like be able to do the job, and doesn't matter what mic you have. So I used to make my videos before on my iPhone and inside my car. And again, the reason why I say this, not to be like like mean or condescending about it, is just saying like it's important to know what our priorities are. And I know some people are interested in people's setup, but there's plenty of like great channels about it. Like Think Media, if you're interested in like YouTube, the type of gear you need, check out Think Media YouTube channel. Amazing. You can learn everything you guys need there. But for me, I'm much rather talk about stuff that makes sense. So 7 lines, mostly like, especially if you're going to go to React, you're going to be focusing more on functional programming, and you're not going to be doing too much class-based JavaScript. Not saying that it doesn't exist, but it's with React, there's especially with React, they're literally everything is functional programming, and they're trying to not use classes. They still support classes, but they don't use them. Now, with that being said, you should spend time on kind of knowing some of the basic class-based stuff, because I had an interview where they had me implement something with factory functions, but then they also had me implement something using classes, basically the same thing. So understanding the basic for the interview purposes is important, but at the end of the day, working at your job is especially working with React, everything is like functional based programming, not really doing too much with classes. Even when I do backend stuff, I focus on functional paradigm, um, and because I don't want to worry about like this keyword and all this other stuff. But with that being said, is that you have to understand that some of the stuff, for instance, you might not, I'll give you an example. You might not be good with classes right now. Let's just say it. But once you get a job, and let's say it requires you to work with classes, because you constantly work with classes, and you could do this in your learning, you just say, for next 2 weeks, I'm just going to look at everything classes. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. So for instance, I used to suck at GraphQL, but then there was a requirement at my job to use GraphQL in our project. And the first week, the second week was really hard, but third, fourth, fifth week, it gets easier because you see it all the time. And so, yes, I agree. You do need an expensive mechanical keyboard because it goes clickety clack, 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 clack. I got this one for $100. That's too much money for a keyboard, but I like to go clickety clack, clack, clickety. Like, I love my keyboard, so I can go. I don't even code. I just sit at home, like, just do this, and it just gets me excited, like, in the wrong ways. So yeah, mechanical keyboard you need. I bought this not too long ago, so like I already worked as a developer for like a year and a half before I invested in a mechanical keyboard. That's like the fanciest setup thing I have on my desk, by the way. Let's see more. Yeah, so yes for expensive mechanical keyboard. And so we're about to hit hour and a half mark. And so, do you guys have any questions? But before I go, I just want to say to you guys, look, it's not easy to break into the field, and it's a combination of many things that you need to do to get hired. And it doesn't mean that all those things are going to work equally, but you just don't know which thing will give you more umph. So you kind of have to do all these different things together, like we discussed, from LinkedIn to your GitHub to the tech that you have to know to sharing stuff and being part of the community to like everything else, developing your um, soft skills, being comfortable talking about your code, being nice, right? Like grumpy developers don't get hired. And like literally um, at my job, my boss said to me, look, there's plenty of developers better than you. He literally said it to my face. He said, Paul, you're not the best developer. He told this to my face, and I was like, I don't know what to make of it. Is this going to be a bad meeting? But then he goes to me, but the reason why I like you, because you're responsible, you work well with the team, you understand that when you work at a company, you're not working in a silo, you're working together with a team, you're not afraid to ask questions, you're able to communicate well, everybody likes you. I know you're responsible because everybody has a pleasant time working with you. They know that whatever they tell you to do, you're going to do it. And they know if you're stuck, you're going to ask for help, which they don't mind helping you because you pay attention, you ask good questions. So all of that soft skill stuff is the reason why I have this job, because this is what my boss said. He said, all the technical coding stuff, you could learn it. But being a good team player and having good character, that's something a little bit harder to do, because that's like, yeah, you could learn it, but also part of it is just how you are as a person. And basically, to develop those characters, you have to become that person. And this is why it's so it's so important. So 7 lines. Do you find easier or better to use normal CSS, Sass, or worth using like style components? So I start HTML, CSS, JavaScript project, CSS, Sass. When you do React, you could learn CSS modules, style components with regular CSS and Sass. And then once you learn that, you could use Power of Tailwind or React Bootstrap or Bootstrap. And the reason you would do Tailwind or Bootstrap is because it will help you to develop things way faster. But notice how I mentioned it in progressive steps. HTML, CSS, Sass, responsive design. Then you start doing a little bit of React. Then you have style components, CSS modules, just know the basics. And then Tailwind, and then React Bootstrap, right? Progressive. So if you don't know CSS, don't do Tailwind. You know what I'm saying? You need to know the basics. Yeah, Malcolm Green, 100%. Mechanical keyboards are so annoying and distracting. I think that's part of the reason why I have one, just so I could troll myself when I code. Yeah, no, mechanical keyboards, they are annoying, but I type so slow that and quiet that it's not a big deal. And so basically, like before I got too caught up in the comments, I was saying like switching careers is not, or learning to code or breaking into the field, it's such a tough journey. And I hate that a lot of people undervalue it by saying anybody could do it in like 2 months, 3 months. Just take my Python super awesome course and you'll get a job making $100,000. But the reality of it, it's not that easy. And some people who eventually make it just because it's exciting, you know, people love talking about day in life, check out my cool gear, people get caught in a dream, that a lot of people over embellish the reality because they're either trying to sell you something or they're trying to make themselves seem cooler, that, you know, look how fast I broke into the field. And like there's one guy, he's like, I went from cooking chicken at whatever that chicken place, KFC, to working at Google in 3 months. Well, that guy could go fuck himself. You know what I mean? Like, who's that helping? No, like look, I used to teach Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and MMA. I decided to switch careers. I stumbled around for 4.5 years before taking it seriously. And then, you know, I started coding around 35. And only when I was 39 years old, I got my job. And I'm not saying that I want you guys to waste your time like I did and not do the things that are important to get you hired. But just know that this journey is hard. And yes, people could do it in 6 months to like a year, but you have to understand that you're your own person, and it's going to take you how long it's going to take you. So you can't set unrealistic expectations to yourself by being like, hey, if these people are getting in 3 months and I don't get in 3 months, I must be stupid. You're not stupid. It's that most people, they're giving you the dream. They're giving you like, you know, these Instagram models on Instagram, they're not real people. Like the amount of Photoshop and stuff they use, you see them in real life, totally different story. And so the point here is that you are, you know, you need to have realistic expectations and only compare yourself to the day you were before. And that's what you got to do. Bro, Tripping, what's up? It's been forever. I haven't seen you, my man. Love to see you. Hey, Paul, you still freelance these days with WordPress or Shopify? I don't do any freelancing because I feel it's the hardest thing to break into, especially if you don't have any experience. But at the same time, I've done it before with WordPress, not Shopify. And I know it's possible, but it's very hard to break into, because when you're doing freelancing, you're not just responsible to show up and do your work. There's all these other things that go into, like finding clients, billing clients, all this other stuff. And by the way, I don't know enough about Shopify development and Shopify freelancing side of things. So check out Coding Face. He's the best when it comes to Shopify stuff, or getting jobs not traditional ways. If you're just starting out, like email dev, he has amazing courses. He does a lot of good stuff. But for me, like get your job, build experience first, and then you could do freelancing. And the only reason I say that, because the stress that freelancing causes for me is not worth it. I just much rather show up, put in my 8 hours, and go home. I'm not saying that everybody agrees with me, but that's the first approach that I would recommend, because I used to have my own business. And when you have your own business, there is no 40-hour week. It's all the time you stressing about, am I going to be able to get paid? Or if you have employees, am I going to be able to pay my employees? Or what if my customer decides not to pay me? So it's very difficult. But if you are wanting to do freelancing and look into Shopify dev and stuff like that, check out Coding Face. He's my hero. Seven Line says, so as you get progressively farther in your experience and method of work become exponentially easier as a system admin after 5 years. Yes, 100%. That's a great point that you're making. I would work like 2 real hours a day making big bucks. Yeah, and that is absolutely true. The more you do something, like the easier and faster you're going to be more productive. It's kind of like this ramp up speed that you have. I remember when I started this project from scratch, I was moving at like a snail speed, but now that we built enough, I kind of have these patterns in place that even like junior devs could come see the patterns that I created before and quickly get stuff done. So yes, things do become exponentially easier until you hit a problem that you've never solved before. Then you're kind of back to square one, but that's perfectly fine. And yep, same story, blah, blah, blah. Me in this field, lol. What's your opinion about changing very slow WordPress website to React app in front and keeping the back in WordPress and keeping my SQL? So Malcolm Green, that's a great question. And I personally don't like the integration with WordPress API. And I know they have a GraphQL plugin also that allows you to work better. And I know a lot of people do that, where they have a WordPress backend, and then they have front end in React. Here's the reason why I don't like it. By the way, a lot of people do that, and a lot of people make great money doing that. But the reason I don't like it is because I'm a JavaScript developer. And whenever you have your backend, like your WordPress backend is in PHP. So if you have to do some custom code in PHP, I have to do PHP. So for me, I much rather have my tech stack be all JavaScript. And so for me, I prefer, instead of using WordPress, I use something like Strappy CMS, which is very similar to WordPress, and it allows you to create a decoupled backend, and then you could create a front end with whatever you want. And so the previous application, my Teams application that I showed you here, this one, it's basically a backend application. I'm sorry, it's a front-end application using React, and then for backend, I'm using Strappy. And because it's all JavaScript, for me, development experience is like really smooth. So that's why I don't do what you're talking about. But I know that, by the way, working with WordPress and then creating decoupled or using WordPress as a headless CMS and then creating a React front end, a lot of people do that. I tried it. And then I realized that to me, I want to be all in JavaScript land. So here we go. Excuse me. Yeah, it's definitely a whole other ballpark. Setting up time aside, doing freelancing, and learning business skills. Top of tech skills, and that's 100%. You nailed it on the head, Boat Tripping. Right? It's basically you're freelancing. You need to develop business skills, marketing skills, on top of your tech skills. But for me, working in the tech industry, I just have to have the tech skills. Although, as you could see, the way I talk, the way I self-promote myself, I hold marketing, soft skills at a very high regard. So to me, like, it's a must. Yeah, Sanity CMS and Contentful are great. I use Contentful. I don't like it because it's paid. Sanity, I looked at it super briefly, but basically there's plenty of options for you guys to use and create an API using some CMS that exists. I love Strapi for 3 reasons. Number one, it's open source. That means it's free. And I could look at the backend code and I could see exactly what it is. And I could learn from their code examples. Number two, it's highly customizable. So you could be a complete beginner and start using Strapi, not knowing anything. You could set up a pretty good API really quickly. But then if you need custom features like custom controllers, Strapi gives you ability to write your own custom controls to add whatever code you want. If you want, send emails, if you want to implement like real lifetime chat or whatever you want, it allows you to do that. So that's why I think of kind of stick with Strapi in my boat. But yeah, there's plenty of CMSs available. You just got to pick what you like. Just because I like Strapi doesn't mean that you have to like it, but Strapi is amazing. I love Strapi. And I try to come at coding phase, but I noticed in his course, he puts a lot of stress on learning Webpack and Gulp. Maybe some of the courses he's done a while ago, because Gulp used to be very important now, like Webpack. But to be honest, I don't really focus on doing any of that Webpack setup from scratch. I just use Create React App. And a lot of companies, by the way, they either have somebody else who already set up the dev environment, especially if you're a junior, you're not going to be doing that configuration. But either somebody already set it up or you're just creating something with Create React App or what have you. I don't think there's nothing wrong. Yeah, Gulp probably, definitely not so much. But what I'm assuming on his platform, he has a lot of courses, and some of the courses he made when Gulp was popular, and I'm sure that's why he still has some courses that have Webpack to give you another reason, to like, oh, hey, Gulp, nobody uses Gulp. Here's how you do it in Webpack. So I'm glad that he's at least covering all his bases. I didn't think people still use Gulp. Yeah, I think it's definitely, if it's not dead yet, it's dead. Like I know this other content creator, I forgot his name, he created a course where he was using Gulp, and he actually went back and redid the whole course using Webpack because Webpack seems to be the standard. I know there's something else coming out that makes it even easier. Yeah, but tripping, take a look at Strapi. It's really awesome, and I'm not an super expert at Strapi, but I build a pretty significant application at the current work that I work at for a financial company. We use Strapi as a backend. And the only reason I chose it is because we have a small team. We don't have enough developers. And so it allowed us to bootstrap our API and get a lot of work done with me being the main developer. And at the end of the day, it gives us an ability to write custom backend code when that's required. So, guys, I could already feel my voice is starting to go. So what I'm going to say, I love you all. Thank you so much for joining me. I do these live streams every Saturday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. This Saturday live stream, it's all about getting hired, the steps that you need, the checklist that you need to complete, the things that you have to do. I'm not making stuff up. I'm literally giving you stuff out of the work that I had to do to get to where I am today. I'm basically giving you what I did. And I'm not saying that you have to follow me in my steps, but I'm just telling you it's like a pilot who knows how to fly a plane telling you how to fly a plane. You know what I'm saying? I'm that guy in the trenches who just suffered for a little bit to get a job. I got the job, and so I'm sharing my experience. Notice how I'm not talking about cooking or dating advice. Although I could give you cooking and dating advice, but I suck at both of those, and so I would be the worst person. So the whole point of this stream, especially on Saturday, is to speak out of my experience, talk about the steps that I took to get to where I am today, and to hopefully you guys find some value out of it, and it'll help you along the way. So before I go, this final question. So 7 lines GraphQL, worth looking into, but don't look into it until you feel comfortable working with REST. So GraphQL used to be super popular. I still love GraphQL, but basically, if you're starting out, REST is the first way to go. Once you created a CRUD application with REST, then you could look at diving into GraphQL. And by the way, that's why I love Strapi so much, because it allows you to create REST endpoints and also allows you to do GraphQL endpoints at the same time. So you could learn how to work with REST using Strapi, and then you could level up and learn how to work with GraphQL. But yeah, everybody have a great rest of the weekend. Bird Tripping, great to see you. If you see Joe from Coding Phase, say hello to him. Tell him that I want to chat with him on his live stream. So the more people bug him about it, the sooner it will happen. That guy's amazing. I have so many questions to him because the guy is not just a good developer. He's just such a good person. And more importantly, he is like a legitimate entrepreneur who thinks about stuff not from the standpoint of like, you know, oh, code this app. He's always thinking about how could he solve a customer's problem. He's always like, what is the service I could create to make money? And that's amazing attitude. But anyway, with that being said, guys, if you're late and you didn't smash the like button, you don't have to smash the like button. Smash the like button anyway. Not for me, but for all of you beautiful people in the comments. But you could always rewatch the stream. And I'll see you guys next Saturday, 9 Eastern. Or if you want to see me fail at coding, Tuesday night stream at 9 p.m. Eastern as well. With that, much love to you guys, wherever you are. I hope you guys are doing good. Love to you, to your family. Hope everybody healthy and happy. And I'll see you guys next stream. Have a good night, everybody. Peace out.